Welcome again, everyone, to another edition of Republican Stronghold. My guest today is Evelyn Brooks, who's a candidate for Texas governor. Welcome, Evelyn. Thank you for coming all this way. I appreciate it. So, I'm in learning more about you. I'm going to share with our audience a little bit of your background, and then we like to hear from you about why you're running for Texas's highest office. Okay. As well as your goals for your position. So you reside in Tarrant County? That actually didn't get Denton County. Okay, thank you. And you've been married 22 years to Brian. 23 will be this year. So yes, that's my claim. You have two beautiful daughters. Beautiful. You got a BS in elementary ed. Yes. Okay, from Bowie State. Yeah, nice. And since 23, you've been on the Texas Board of Education District 14. 19 counties should have her. Yes. Whew. So you are a school specialist. Yes. Okay. And you've been an educator for Constitute. Well, multiple experience. So I left the classroom when my first daughter was born. And then started a tutoring company, and then I started homeschooling, and then started the small school. So I've still been in education, but just different. Certainly, So help us why you want to run for the high office, because you're running against the very popular governor, Governor Abbott, and as well as many other candidates. So go ahead, share with why you want to.
Yeah, so my why, definitely the young people, children. That is my passion. And a lot of people would say, well, why not another office? Why not Congress? Why not, something as opposed to studying to this position? And my response to that is this. I would love to have legal authority to really produce the outcomes that will really restore a lot of things that have been broken. Restoring just principles of liberty and freedom, restoring our education system, our public education system, just restoring trust of the government again, restoring just our faith in Christ. Just restoring a lot of those principles that we've lost, and I think has been lost in this administration. And I can back up even more because it wasn't always on my radar. So being on the board, I have a different perspective of how government works and how it can work very efficient. And so I went on to the State Board of Education with the hopes of making a difference directly impacting the students and the decisions been made for public education. And to my dismay and discouragement, I figured out that it's not meant to be things. So I'm sitting there on board, passionate about what I do, ready. I take great pride in just being excellent at anything in the future. We do not have an assistant. We do not have an office. There's not a pay. It's a full-time volunteer job for me. And so I'm passionate about what I'm doing and just trying to do the best I can, because I don't believe that it's really set up for us to be very successful. Because the resources and the people that we need are just not there. So you really have to be very creative in how you kind of multiply yourself and kind of work your time and volunteer base and the public and really understanding what is what on in our communities and how I can be effective in the role I'm sitting in. So I had all this I had this great ambition. And I was going to make the difference because I know what real education was like. And so when I got to the board, every legislative session, it makes me cringe inside before we start a legislative session, because I don't get people, legislators asking me what my advice is on their bills. Some of the authors of their bills didn't know their bills. I was able to pinpoint page numbers and line numbers, and they didn't know it. So that made me ask, well, who's writing these laws? Who is writing the bills? And so I just kind of went on this self-reflection and how really can I make a big impact on families, essentially. You strengthen the family, you strengthen the child, and you really have a more promising future. And not just in the child's life as an individual, but in totality as a state and as a nation. And so you really just want to see children thrive. I had a beautiful upbringing, a great childhood, and every child really should feel loved and safe and with the opportunity to become who God has created them to be, not who we think it should be based off an aptitude. So just a lot of things. So that is my why. So why governor? So I'm sitting there at 1605 was just passed, 88th legislative session. And as I'm sitting there, I had a lot of amendments. I had read the bill very well, I think several times, this law. And so as I was being ready to recommend my amendments to the board, the chairman stalks me and he says, these are only recommendations for the State Board of Education. The ultimate deciding factor, the ultimate authority rests with the Commissioner of Education. It's a suggestion. So I put my things away and I said, you are absolutely right. That is exactly how the law is written. It takes away our authority and it does give you TEA and the Commissioner of Education the authorities. I said, and this is a very serious education rate law bill. And I don't think parents really understand what it entails. And so a lot of teachers understood, a lot of people who, there were a lot of citizens who understood what the 1605 meant, and then moving forward this legislative session, HB2. So when I sat there and I said, you're absolutely right, it is subjective. It is a suggestion for the State Board of Education, the elected representatives for the state of Texas, to put their input on this and this decision and can this word. And I said, I rest my tongue. And I was in the den. And so I think in that moment, I just said, okay, you're either going to move in a position or you have more legal authority to really make a big investment, or you're going to be unhappy where you are. And so that kind of is that and a few other things that this just kind of confirmed, okay, let's go into a position where we can really restore our public education system and families. And people will say, well, that's just education. There's so much more. And there is so much more. And I believe that I know that I could do a good job. I have the aptitude. I understand people. And I think a lot of people underestimate teachers. As a teacher, I could stretch $1 past 100 cents. So as a teacher, you have to problem solve really quickly, and I'm an old school teacher. So we were really able to perfect our skills. We were able to really gauge where our children were and give them the help they needed. We were really academically driven, not really workforce driven. My purpose for teaching was not for the student to get a job, but for the student to think independently, to problem solve, to think critically, to be able to read and write proficiently with textbooks and do math and writing or social studies and science really well so that you can go into any area and be successful and create whatever your American dream is for your life. And so we were able to really do some things. And now it's very restricted. Teachers aren't allowed to really use the skills. And really, for me, I was born with a pencil in my hand. So it is really something that I was really gifted to do. I knew that, and a lot of teachers are gifted. It's not something that you go into for the money, for the glory, or recognition. It's not that, and your passionate teachers are honestly there. Most of them are really there because they have a desire to touch the next generation of people and to be an inspiration, to change the trajectory of their future. So there's a lot of takeaways that teachers can offer, or that I could offer. And we understand people. We understand families. We understand the dynamics. We understand the needs. We understand the needs of just in a well-educated citizen, right? And so not only that, there's a lot of other issues and problems I think that we have that is just a good moment for new leadership. There's a lot of threats, challenges rather. There's a lot of threats, and it seems to come in from all sides. And I believe with good leadership, we can really change the trajectory that we see a lot of other states making. We can avoid a lot of the mistakes because we can choose to be a sovereign state. We can choose to do things the Texas way. We can choose to actually follow the Constitution in every law that we pass. We can actually do something good and actually be an example for the other states because we know as citizens, Texans, what is best for our lives. So why does the government need to make the decisions that affect our lives? We know that small, strong businesses are important to a community. We know that a public school is important in our neighborhoods. It builds community. We're close to teachers. And so when we look at laws like 1605, HB 1605, where the state is now a publisher, the same state that approves vendors and different publishing materials, we're supposed to be unbiased, right? We're supposed to have a fair measuring tool to really determine if this is a good and appropriate instructional material for the children in the state of Texas. But now that you're in publisher, who gets the best advantage? Who has direct advantage to the children? And then you incentivize it. So now you have really taken out the different publishers out from market because who's going to do against Texas levy? No one is going to do that. So you have alleviated your choices. And so I thought that was problematic. A lot of the stories are not those rich stories we grew up on. Do I need to stop here? Forgive me because I could keep going. The stories aren't the rich stories that we grew up, or even, if the home teaching methodology and pedagogy has changed. So you have a state-owned curriculum. It's online. It's an open education resource, and it's a different teaching pedagogy. So it's not the traditional ways that we teach children. Reading, for example, English, where it's just an isolated foundation course where you teach them how to read and write. It is instead integrated heavily with social studies and science at different grade levels at that. So if I'm in first grade and I'm working on the state's curriculum in first grade, I might see stories with information from information from second grade, third grade. And that will blow over a child's head, because developmentally there's a developmental process. So you have to ask yourself, who wrote this? Who sat in a room without children, without stuff and put in a classroom and said, this is good for the entire state of Texas? So that really got me on fire. And I can hear what your next story or your next question is before I go into just kind of some of the challenges that we're faced with now as well.
Sure. I mean, definitely challenge. I mean, you're running against several other candidates who also wants the same position, whether it be Democrat or Republican. And we've got an incumbent, very popular veterinarian, Abbott, who's been endorsed by President Trump. So what would you bring differently than our current?
Definitely not the special interest groups, not the lobbyists, not the global corporations, not the public-private partnerships, not the power, but the people. We want to change. That's why so many people are vying for this position. Because people are tired of the saying, kick the can down the road. Let's really not problem solve. Let's not fix this. Let's just tie a Band-Aid on top. Let's patch it up and let's just push our goals. And then no one's held accountable. So under leadership, where I'm held accountable, all leadership, all elective representatives should be held accountable. Why do we get to hide behind immunity? Why can't we be responsible for the lives that we've been trusted with? And so, with new leadership, there is a new standard that should place there. You can't have both corruption and freedom. You can't have both money-driven as opposed to people-driven and have liberty. You honestly have to have a person of morality, his virtue, in a position where the lives of people are in his or her care. And that, I believe, is what is missing right now. Just our values, just the Texas values, so that we all embrace. You would, it would just fathom I think, Texans and really the nation to just know what it looks like when we welcome Christ back into our lives, into our homes, into our government. Not to say we want a state religion. That's not what I'm saying. But to say that there's a set of principles that we are guided by. We're just like I've been studying that great generation, the Braves generation. When they came home after the World War II, they were like-minded. They had values. They went into different areas of, they went to college. They used the GI Bill. And they became excellent at whatever they put their minds to, when their hands to. They made something out of nothing, and they have really on their shoulders what we are really standing up.
A constitution
Is
a Christian value.
there's no America without those values. There's no America without due process. There's no America without rights, liberty, and not only the pursuit of happiness, but the pursuit of private property and limited government. That is the trade. That is what we fought so hard. You looked at the Civil War. You look at, that is what we're made of. And now we're so far removed, I think our forefathers, the founders, would really cringe if they saw what we have become.
I agree. They would as well. It's absolutely cringe.
Yeah. So I think we need morale. I think we just need just a different leadership. I think 3 terms is sufficient. New ideas are what is needed. Just getting engaged with the people. You're like, it seems impossible. A lot of people say, this is so impossible, but it's not for God. So whatever his will is, will be. But I work like hardest to get the message out, to help people understand that I am here for them. And what's fun is that I've had 3 years of service to really show a lot of Texans what I'm capable of. And I think that's the kind of need that there's a reference there. I can, you can look at the videos, of my work on the board, and there's just a lot of constituents who can say, you know what? She came and saw me in the hospital. She came and saw my child at the hospital. She helped me get another 2. You know what? There's good stories. Just working with a veteran. She's like, I know this isn't a school board issue, but I have a concern with my care. I was able to help. You know what I mean? And so it's really kind of just it's a service. It's a heart of service. And it's a heart to really see people thrive and just make life a lot easier and bearable in Texas.
Any last thoughts that you want to share with our audience before we wrap this up?
I do. Thank you. I would just encourage my neighbors, my fellow Texans, to get involved in your local governments. Get involved in your state board of education. Well, your state board means your local state board means your local city council meetings, your commissioners. Why do I say this? A lot of changes happen at the local level, and I go to meetings, and I'm guilty too. I can't sit here and say that I've always been a perfect voter. I haven't. I've not always kept up with my civil responsibilities. I really got self-absorbed being a wife and a mother, and really I've always volunteered in some capacity, but I've not always been there. I've not always shown up. I've always kind of trusted my lucky leaders to take care of it without being responsible for holding it accountable. So my ask is that you would get involved in your local community, understand what the budget is for your school, understand the budget for city council, understand the symbols of freedom, understand what your rights are, understand the Constitution, understand that what we have is really worth saving and fighting for. My takeaway is this: Gen Z, we have now a generation of students, of young people who feel hopeless in freedom and liberty and justice for all, and they are accepting socialism in exchange for our freedom, on our unalienable rights. So now is an opportunity for you to get engaged and be involved and to make a difference at a local level, and then to expand from there. Get a young person. I'm helping to understand the beauty of our state, the beauty of our country, because you matter. And I want that message to be conveyed as I have this pipe, this posset.
Thanks, Evelyn, for coming all this way to sit with you. I really,
Well worth it. Thank you there.
it's good psych. Join us again for another edition of Republican Stronghold. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.